it's Linda Rayner. So if you've been thinking about quitting your job, or you currently are thinking about it and yet you haven't pulled the trigger, then today I want to help you through that thought process, because I know that quitting your job is not something that should be taken lightly. Trust me when I say I know what it feels like to want to quit your job. I know how sometimes so desperate you are to get out of where you're at that you would be willing to say right then and there to your boss, listen, I just want to give my notice. I know what that feels like. I know from firsthand experience. But on top of that, I also know, because this is what I do. I deal with a lot of people who want to quit their jobs, and what I find is that not a lot of people think it through the way that they should. Quitting your job is a big deal, because what can happen to a lot of people is they end up following the idea that they should just quit, and they take a job that's similar to what they had, and then they end up being unhappy again, and then they repeat that process, they quit again, and they take another job. And those people I call jumpers. You know, they jump like a frog from job to job to job. As much as in today's day and age people don't stay at companies for 10 years at a time or for the rest of their lives, at the same time, if you're leaving your job on like a yearly basis, it says something on your resume. It says something about your character. And unfortunately, it's not very positive. It says that this person doesn't know what they really want. This person doesn't think through their decisions as to where they work. You know, it can say a lot of things. And of course, there are exceptions. This doesn't necessarily apply to everybody, but if you consciously quit a job and you take another job, and then you consciously quit that after a year, and you take another job and you consciously quit that, that does say something about your character. That's why the idea of quitting your job should not be taken lightly, because it does impact your future career. So I want to help you through this thought process. So if you're thinking about quitting your job and you're telling yourself you want to leave, then you have to ask yourself one major question, and that is, why do I want to quit? Why do I want to leave? Why do I want to get the hell out of here so badly? And generally, your answer is going to fall into one of two buckets. So the first bucket could be, I want to quit my job because the work is too stressful, the hours are horrible, my boss is annoying, my coworkers are annoying, I'm getting super frustrated, I'm not being challenged enough, and I don't know, I just don't feel like it fits for me anymore. So that could be bucket A, or your answer could be in bucket B, from bucket B, which is, I'm quitting my job because I know exactly what it is that I'm ready to do. I've learned a lot from this role, and I'm now ready to take on a new challenge, a new opportunity, and a new opportunity has presented itself to me, or I'm going to create my own new opportunity, and this is something that I'm going after and really become more of the best version of myself. Do you see the difference? Bucket A is all about negative kind of feelings, frustration, stress, negativity, unhappiness. And then bucket B is all about excitement, about the future, and planning and visioning and knowing what it is that you're really going after. So if I really asked you right now, why do you want to quit your job? Would you be able to tell me what the reasons are? I mean, if I just gave you, bucket A and bucket B, and you had to pick, where would you pick your answer from? The thing is if you only rely on the negative reasons as to why you want to leave your job, then it equates it to running away. You're really just running away from pain. You're running away from a bad boss. You're running away from frustration. If you run, you're going to end up running into the arms of the same type of situation. The thing about being in a job that you're no longer enjoying, you have to look at what's the lesson underneath this? What is there for me to learn about myself? Then what you would do is you'd move over to bucket B. If this is what I don't want, then what do I want? And then you start building that. You start thinking, okay, what kinds of opportunities would I want in terms of what would make me feel most challenged, and what would make me feel happier, and what would make me be the best version of myself. And that could be just taking another job that is slightly different role from what you had. So it's something new and that's something different. It might be a little bit more challenging. Or it could be, if you hate working for someone else, then it's to start your own business. But you have to think that all through before you quit. Because honestly, what I've seen when I was a recruiter and what I see now as a career coach, if people are job hopping, what ends up happening is you feel relief after you've quit. You feel so happy. You're like, yes, I'm out of there. And then because you didn't have a plan and you didn't really ask yourself the hard questions before you left and before when you had money coming in and now you have no money coming in, people start to panic and then they start looking for anything. They start looking for any job that they can get. And 9 times out of 10, they end up with a job that was identical to the job that they had before. But on that note, staying at a job that you don't enjoy is also not healthy because you're stagnating, you're unhappy, you're simply doing it for the paycheck. There is something else out there for you, but you have to start thinking about what that next thing is going to be. So I hope that was helpful to you. Please subscribe to my channel down below. I upload videos every Wednesday, and that's to talk about anything related to career and life advice. If you have any questions on topics that you want me to talk about, definitely put them in the comments, or you can visit my website, that's lindarayner.com, and you can send me an email, and I'd love to hear from you. So again, be positive, stay strong, and I'll see you next week. Bye.